It's time for Lefties Losing It, and get ready to lose some functioning brain cells because we're going to bring you some diabolically dumb takes from the dim-witted left, starting with Don Lemon. You remember him? He was sacked by CNN after 17 years of the network. That followed accusations of misogyny and misbehaviour. And then there were his terrible ratings. Then he was sacked by Elon Musk after a disastrous interview, but he's still out there spewing his terrible takes, often race-based takes. Here he claims you cannot be black and be MAGA. Just listen to this and marvel at how a man this divorced from reality was able to be a network anchor for so long.
It's the same thing that when I see not all black Republicans, but I see a black MAGA person who is carrying Donald Trump's water and they know that he's lying, it is the shortest line to the front. Because if you're black and you're whatever, you're just in line with a bunch of other Democrats that are doing the same thing that you're doing. But if you become a black MAGA person, it's like, whoa, let's book this person, let's put him on television.
So you don't think you can be a sincere black MAGA person?
I just said, I don't think that. I just said I think there can be sincere Republicans,
but you can't be a sincere black Republican.
I don't think that you can be a rational MAGA, be black and be a rational MAGA person. I think you can be black and be a Republican.
I think they would find that very insulting.
Well, I mean, the truth is often insulting.
The truth is often insulting, and the truth is Don Lemon is a race-baiting simpleton who managed to foul his way up at CNN until even they had enough of his nonsense. As well as being a certifiable clown, he is also hugely ineffective. Here he is on CNN explaining how he campaigned for Kamala Harris by going around telling black men in battleground states that they were essentially dumb if they supported Trump.
I went from battleground state to battleground state. When they invited me to the convention, I didn't just want to fly there. I said, I'm going to go and talk to voters in battleground states, and I did. It was not curated. I went up to people just doing man on the street and said, who are you going to vote for? Black men. And time after time after time, they said, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Why?
Now, there are reasons why. They said, because most of the time they said, well, you know, for economic reasons, right? Or because he gave me a stimulus check, and I had to correct them over and over.
Can't believe that didn't work out. But old mate Don is not alone in being hopelessly out of touch, hopelessly clueless about real people and what motivates them. Let's hear now from two awfuls, affluent white female lefties, former NBC and CBS host Katie Couric and an alleged historian, Heather Cox Richardson. Here she claims that Donald Trump is suffering cognitive decline. Not Joe Biden, but Donald Trump.
Katie, the man is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He really is. And you know, that to me is, I mean, everybody's like, oh,
the ego knows no bounds.
No, the ego has never known any bounds, but the ego used to be anchored at least in a brain that could finish a sentence, and it's not there anymore. I promise you, I watch this man a lot, and I'm not a doctor. I'm telling you, if he were in my family, we would be looking at care.
Remember when Katie Couric had some credibility? Me neither. The way these people lie is just shameless, gross. Let's check in on how President Trump is doing. One thing is for sure, he is the funniest president we've ever had.
He didn't get an Emmy for his TV program 3 years in a row, and he started tweeting that the Emmys were rigged again.
Should have gotten it.
This...
Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with...
Because nobody will show up.
People with...
Well, it's true. Nobody shows up to his rally.
He said back in 2006, gee, I hope it does collapse because then I can go in and buy some and make some money. Well, it did collapse.
That's called business, by the way.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
It's amazing. I mentioned food stamps, and that guy who's seriously overweight went crazy.
By the way, I don't like this mic. Whoever the hell brought this mic system, don't the son of a to put it in, I'll tell you. These people. No, this mic is terrible. Stupid mic keeps popping. Do you hear that, George? Don't pay him. Don't pay him. You know, I believe in paying. But when somebody does a bad job, like this stupid Mike, you shouldn't pay the best, sir. Terrible.
As I said, he's the funniest president we'll ever have. Now, we love nothing more than mocking the dangerously delusional left, and it doesn't get much more delusional and dim-witted than a member of the LGBTQIA++ community cheering for Palestine. They've been doing it for years now, and the levels of idiocy are only increasing. Listen to this clown giving a shout-out to what he calls trans Palestinians.
I want to give a special shout out to all the queer and trans Palestinians. Not only are we honored to have you as part of our community, but Palestine is the moral compass of the world.
Palestine is the moral compass of the world. So the moral compass of the world is virulently anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-everything LGBTQIA. You don't have to worry about pronouns in Gaza or the West Bank. You have to worry about staying alive. No rooftop parties, but the turkeys in the West keep cheering for Christmas. That was the UK, Manchester. And here is another turkey cheering for Christmas in song.
And this song is written for Palestine, and here you have it. We are waving the rubber of our hopes and dreams, marching out while our voices for the world to see, posting back in the hatred of the Israelis.
That is enough of that. Thank you. I told you 5 seconds only. The producers have gone rogue. Let's hear from this young lass who thinks Trump and RFK want to put her in a concentration camp. Try to follow this logic if you can.
Well, I'm autistic and bisexual, and I don't want to be put on a registry, and I don't want my data to be used illegally by RFK, and I don't want to be shipped off to a health farm by RFK that he's going to, he plans to put us all on, similar to I shouldn't say similar, it's a health farm version of the concentration camps in Alcatraz, and nobody deserves to be in concentration camps. That's Nazi shit.
Now, let's see how the media covered the raid on warmonger and serial leaker John Bolton's house and how they covered the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Here is the ABC's John Cowell. See if you can detect the subtle difference.
So he sees this as an opportunity to, again, portray himself as the victim. This is classic Donald Trump. He spent most of his presidency portraying himself as a victim of the Russia investigation, certainly his impeachments. And now he's portraying himself as a victim of a runaway and politicized Department of Justice.
In a moment, we'll get to the stunning developments coming into the weekend, with FBI agents swarming around the home and office of former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. But first, the context. This didn't happen in a vacuum. John Bolton is on a long list of Trump critics who are now facing the wrath of President Trump and his Justice Department.
Just shameless stuff from a shameless charlatan who has pushed every hoax from Russian collusion to the fine people lies in recent years. And thanks to Maze Moore for putting that content together. Let's look at CNN's treatment of the same news. Here is the thoroughly discredited Andrew McCabe before and after.
Let's remember that to get a search warrant in any case, whether it's you or I or the former president, you have to go before a federal judge and convince that judge that there is probable cause to believe both that a federal crime has been committed and that evidence of that crime is contained within the space you have described in your warrant request. So we have, in this situation, a federal judge who made that determination.
Now, that was the before. That was when Trump's property was raided, all very proper. But when Bolton was raided, well, this is clearly a case of political persecution. He was raided because he criticised the president, CNN claims.
We know that Mr. Bolton has said critical things about the president. That's not illegal. That's not a crime. That's pretty squarely within your First Amendment right in this country. And in fact, you shouldn't be. You're not supposed to be. The Department of Justice and the FBI have all kinds of policies absolutely prohibiting investigating people for the exercise of their First Amendment rights. And so if that's what's going on here, and there's all kinds of reasons to believe that that might be the true motivation.
Gosh, I wonder why trust in the media has hit record lows. Joining me now for more on this is Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, what do you make of this raid and the media reporting around it?
The media, I think, as you say, trust has gone from infuriating attitudes towards media, infuriating to irrelevant, really. I think it was tragically laughable at some point along the way, and now it's irrelevant, where nobody's taking them seriously. Their ratings are down, trust is down, audiences are down. But yet it is like this slow-moving train wreck to watch that, because everybody can do these split-screen before and after moments now in the age of the internet, and they know it, and yet they keep doing it. Maybe they're speaking to a small slice of the audience that doesn't consume that.
I think they count on their audience not being across that information, so
I think
they're going to get away with it. But that audience is diminishing
shrinking by the day.
We are seeing the online audience exploding, and this is where these real-time fact checks are happening, and people are seeing the media for who they are. Now, let's hear from Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, on efforts to root out those within the deep state who think their ideology trumps the Constitution and the will of the people.
There are deep state actors across the federal government, and they are people who, like Vindman, for example, who believe that their actions, their views are more important than those of elected leaders, duly elected by the American people, like the President of the United States. These are dangerous people because they believe their views and opinions supersede the United States Constitution that they all swear an oath to uphold, to support and defend, and that their views and opinions supersede those, again, who are elected by the American people, specifically the President of the United States.
Kosha, Tulsi went on to say she is determined to root out these individuals, but that is going to be a gargantuan task. These agencies, you could argue, have been corrupted by politics for decades.
Sure is. It's such a tall order because they have these entrenched, protected interests, and the system is self-preserving. So it's just really hard for somebody to come in and try to shatter decades of those entrenched protections. But if anybody can, she seems to be somebody who can, and she's meeting the moment. She's tough. She's patriotic. She's a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserves. She switched parties, which shows that she is principled and willing to go against the grain. She's got a personal vendetta because she was on the receiving end of some of this.
I was about to say, she's a personal victim of this politicisation. And I think it's very clever of Trump to put together a team who've had a real personal insight into how bad the bureaucracy has become.
Absolutely. So many of them have been personally wronged, himself, of course, at the tip of that spear. And that is human nature, that it does give you extra mojo and extra motivation to go after this. So she's trying to do it. She's fired, I think, 40% of the staff, because that's a big part of it. The fewer people you have, the closer they are and better visibility you have into their motivations. But the clock is ticking. They've got 3.5 years left, so we'll see what happens.
Now, let's talk about Donald Trump firing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook over allegations of mortgage fraud. Quite serious allegations. There is a criminal referral underway. But the media can only see race and gender. The New York Times has an article implying that she's being targeted because she is the first black woman to ever serve as Fed governor. She may have been appointed by Biden because she's black. Kosha, he was not shy about saying he was making decisions based on identity politics. But it's quite obvious that she's not being sacked because of her gender or her skin colour here.
That old chestnut, they will always go to that. And I think she's finding out that the lady parts and the skin color do not make you impervious to these things when people are going after them. She now makes number 3 of people that are specifically for mortgage fraud in the crosshairs right now. Adam Schiff, the Russiagate original hoaxer, who is probably lawyering up Letitia James. Which is the funniest because she charged Trump, very ironic, on that of which she is guilty. He wasn't and was just acquitted earlier this week from that ridiculous judgment. And Lisa Cook, it adds salt to the wound, especially because as a Fed Reserve governor, she is part of the panel that is in charge of interest rates, which are so high. And it's one of many reasons why young people are finding it difficult to get into the home ownership ladder. Meanwhile, she has been committing fraud and enjoys favorable interest rates, allegedly, because of the way she filled out her application. So that's also funny in its own way, and I don't think the race and gender shield is going to shield her.
No, and it is also, like you said, quite amusing that mortgage fraud is the issue for several of these bureaucrats, including Letitia James and now this Fed governor, when it was what they tried to get Trump on. They tried to bankrupt him over this. They tried to really destroy what he'd worked his life to build. And now they're being scrutinised for the way they're filling out their mortgage forms. And
So
I'm surprised at how haphazard they've been in.
So brazen, and it feels almost like they know that they're above the system. You know, they've been lecturing the other side. No one is above the law, but you would only be that careless, if you will, if you think that you're above the law and you will never be found out. It's a new day.
Now, Donald Trump is promising to extend his crackdown on violent crime from DC to other blue cities like LA, New York and Chicago. And that has upset the governor of Illinois.
We're very pleased about the progress that we're making. I know that I live rent-free in the president's head, and I wish he would spend some time in Chicago so that he could see what a lovely city we have. Governor, quick follow-up. What do you do if the National Guard is activated and comes here?
Kosha, this law and order policy is actually popular among voters. I would argue even among blue city voters, because they're the ones most touched by crime.
Absolutely. That's when your policy positions literally wind up at your doorstep or at your car door or, you know, wherever you might be being attacked. And the DC policy is wildly popular right now. There's all these amazing stats. There hasn't been a single murder in 2 weeks or whatever it is. Here it will be difficult for Trump to test the boundaries of his power as the head of the executive branch, because DC was a special case. It's a federal district, and he could do that. Here it is going to be interesting. I think there's going to be lawsuits and federalism and all that will be tested. But politically, it makes them look so bad that it's almost like they're pro-murder, they're pro-crime.
They're going out of their way to stop an effort to reduce violent crime. And in Chicago, as so many other parts of the US, the biggest victims of violent crime are those in the black community, because they just suffer it disproportionately. So how does that look?
I think Stephen Miller was out saying that it makes them look evil, basically, for what they're doing. And you don't have to live this way. J.D. Vance was saying that. You don't have to live this way. And it's sort of people have just accepted it as an inconvenient fact of life that the inner cities in the greatest country on earth have to be this way. And it doesn't have to be this way. So we shall see where this fight goes, but it would be amazing if you could actually take a place like Chicago, that's a top 10 city in terms of crime, and give it the Bukele treatment, El Salvador treatment, and clean it up.
Well, not whilst this dude is the mayor, because Chicago is a one-party town, and the mayor there, the far-left radical Brandon Johnson, thinks putting criminals in jail is racist and immoral.
We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that, and we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down.
Racist, immoral and unholy, Kosha. What exactly is the left's solution to the crime crisis? Because as you said, Chicago has one of the worst rates in the country.
And it used to be such a great city. Unholy was a new layer on top of that. But it's, again, going back to that shield of racism, if you dare to do anything. But on a serious note, unfortunately, they do believe that. If you look at Mamdani, you look at the defund the police, they really do seem to either believe it or really push that or suggest that somehow incarcerating criminals, which may disproportionately happen to be from one group more than another, is racist, and that's why they don't want to do it. But people are crying out for it. He's one of the worst mayors in the country, and he's headed for a standoff with President Trump.
Now to some local news. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has confirmed Iran's ambassador, Ahmed Sadeghi, will be expelled for his role in orchestrating at least 2 anti-Semitic attacks. That's after ASIO gathered enough intelligence to reach the deeply disturbing conclusion that the ambassador was involved. This is quite extraordinary, Kosha.
It's huge news. I think Penny Wong said it's the first time anybody an ambassador has been expelled since World War II, and maybe even longer. So to many, it feels like a pretty extreme response. However, the intelligence that they're citing saying that there's credible intelligence suggesting that they were linked to 2 cases of arson, basically at a synagogue in Melbourne and a cafe in Sydney. And so they're making this move. I think more broadly, it's showing one tool that the Albanese administration is liking flexing right now in relation to the Middle East conflict. So you saw them banning the sitting MP from Israel last week to come and speak on that side of the equation, and now they're sort of correcting on this side of the equation. And I can't help but wonder if all that is linked, where they're trying to do this balancing act between both sides of this very contentious issue that is, especially in their party, kind of fractured.
Now, my next guest has been in DC, making a nuisance of himself again, trying to stop the deportation of big booty Latinas, and that's a direct quote.
Please! Let our big booty Latinas stay! I love you! Big booty Latinas, protect them!
Yo, AOC's not here, bro.
AOC's not here! Oh my God! Where is she? Do you know where she is?
I don't know, but don't call the press.
Okay, sorry, but I just need to speak to AOC or Tom Homan. This is a bipartisan issue.
Joining me now is a comedian and host of Primetime with Alex Stein on Blaze TV. Alex, I ask this again, what is wrong with you, son?
Honestly, a lot of people, they think conservatives are anti-immigration. No, we just don't want cartel members here that don't have any, background check coming into our country. Really and truly, the great women that are cleaning hotel rooms or working in restaurants and, beautiful big booty Latinas, they deserve amnesty. So I'm fighting for the ones that can't fight for themselves right now.
Dear. Now, let's check in on the dude who could be the next mayor of New York, Democrat and communist Zoran Mamdani. Here he displays his masculine energy, his raw strength. Brace yourselves, ladies. You're about to be underwhelmed.
This is how you move up in the polls. Yeah! Yeah! Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go! Yeah! Let me get one more, let me get one more! Let me get 3! Let me get 3! Let me get 3! Yeah!
3. Alex, he didn't even do a single rep unassisted, let alone 3. You've got to say that was pretty pathetic.
That was very embarrassing. I mean, he should be ashamed. And he's from Africa. You'd think he'd have some strength to be able to do 135 pounds. You think that would be very easy for a normal, adult male that's in decent shape. But Mamdani is weak, and he's going to be weak on crime, and he's going to be weak when it comes to leading the city of New York. And I really hope that he does not win. But, you see all of the momentum that he has. People post this, and even though we're making fun of him, sadly, we're kind of giving him the publicity that he kind of wants, and that might help him propel in this election. So I really hope, for the sake of New York City, one of the greatest cities in the world, that he does not become their leader. But, when you see people cheering on a guy benching 135 pounds, they're not exactly setting the bar very high for what they want in their elected officials.
Now, let's see what's happening in Minneapolis. The mayor there, Jacob Frey, is doing whatever this is. Alex, tell me what is happening in Minneapolis with Minnesota Democrats revoking the endorsement of the Democratic Socialist candidate, Omar Fatah, for Minneapolis mayor. On what grounds have they done this?
Well, probably because they don't want him to win. So they don't want to put the support behind him because they see the Somali community getting behind him. And, they probably would rather him not be in power. I mean, you look at people like Ilhan Omar, and you kind of look at, some of the other Somalian politicians, they probably don't have America's best interest. I think that they have their, they have a little bit of a, a dual loyalty thing going on. And I really think that's coming out when it comes to Omar. People are realizing
Well, the
that he might not be
Democrats
for the people.
Well, the Democrats don't seem to be troubled by that normally, so I'm surprised the Minnesota Democrats would take that action because, well, they haven't stopped others who might have a dual loyalty from running in the past. Now, let's talk about Cracker Barrel. They've issued a statement after the fallout from their silly rebrand. They've said, you've shown us that we could have done a better job. This is a message to their customers, and it was a fairly lengthy diatribe without really much substance. Alex, tell me about this consumer backlash and why people are so upset with this rebrand.
Well, I think this is some of the greatest 5D chess marketing ever. They kind of got everybody in, up in a fit about them rebranding. And then now they're saying they're going to keep Uncle Herschel on the menu and they're not going to take him off. And, there is actually a conspiracy behind this. It's not when these big legacy brands change their logo to, a very simplistic version of their old logo. It's not just a demoralization tactic. A lot of it has to do with these companies are basically real estate holdings. And so when these companies go out of business like McDonald's, the reason why that these McDonald's aren't very unique or Pizza Huts aren't unique anymore, because these fast food companies are basically real estate companies. And they know that one day these businesses are going to go out of business and a new business is going to have to take over these kind of square, gray, plain looking buildings. So it's not necessarily just to demoralize us. There's actually it's just all about profits to these corporations. They don't care about the customer. They just care about their bottom dollar.
Yeah, but they've got to understand that there is a price to pay for going woke, particularly depending on the demographics of your customer base. And there was a piece in the New York Post explaining that woke is becoming a massive risk factor in the corporate world. They said wokeness is generally defined as subjecting the culture and business to left-wing dogma involving race, sex, and viewing all things Americana as anathema. It simply doesn't sell to mass audiences, and yet companies keep going there. Corporate managers, it turns out, are a politically and socially tone-deaf bunch. They are lousy at reading the current mood of the country and its hatred of progressive indoctrination, whether in the classroom or when they simply want to enjoy a beer. It explains it really well, Alex, because we've seen this phenomenon with Bud Light. We've seen it with big brands like Target, Disney, Jaguar. Some iconic brands have suffered some big reputational damage and they've backed away from that woke marketing. Alex, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for your time this evening.